Welcome to CPG Vibes. No scripts,
just chat.
I'm Alex Baer.
And I'm Wade Yenny.
Each episode is recorded live, and we talk all things food and beverage, and so much more.
Feel our vibe and search for CPG Vibes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and make sure to give us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to sponsor our show with your product or service, email us at cpgvibes100@gmail.com.
Now, let's vibe.
All right, welcome to episode 177 of CPG Vibes. Welcome everyone to our show. This is our second edition of the Spotlight series. Our first one was High Touch a few weeks back, and we love High Touch. And this week is New Primal, to Jason Burke. He is all over LinkedIn. He's a 15-year entrepreneur in this business, so it's going to be exciting to bring him on. But before we do that, we have some announcements and all that good stuff. But Wade, how you doing?
Doing good, Alex. Happy Friday. Happy opening preseason game for the Cleveland Browns. Go Browns.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not giving up yet, right?
No. Well, not yet. It's preseason. So I got to wait at least till season, the first game of the season. But it's special today because they're actually playing the Carolina Panthers. So it's kind of a, if I wasn't rooting for the Browns, I'd be rooting for Carolina or the New Orleans Saints from my time in Louisiana. So it should be fun.
All right. I have no dog in this race. I don't know a lot about football or sports. I mean, Rams, obviously, because the SoFi Center is right here, but that's about it. So by default, I'm just going to cheer for the Browns.
Browns,
and
I like it.
And you're wearing a brown shirt for that
reason.
That's
right. Exactly right.
Okay, very clever. I'm wearing blue for the Rams. So there you go. Yeah. When is their preseason game? I guess I got to look that up.
It's probably this weekend, I would guess.
Yeah, a lot of them are probably doing that at the same time. So good stuff. Well, we already have some comments pouring in. We're going to not take too much time before we bring on our guest here. But just a couple of announcements. We announced last week that we have a new premier sponsor, which is Creative Kaiju. So if you'd like to, and just a little bit about them, they're an ongoing sponsor. Personally been working with them for about 3 to 4 years. They do custom graphic design, and they're an agency, but they're much more affordable than, let's say, an in-house graphic designer. Very ideal if you're tightening your belt and watching your budget and you want to get professional graphics made for your website, for social media, for advertising, marketing, and all those different things. So a little bit about Creative Kaiju, and if you go to them through us, you'll save 10% on your first month. And the link, I'm going to put it.
Oh, do we have a special one or no?
It's just the link with it's creativekaiju.com/CPG Vibes.
Got it.
And we don't have that ready because we don't prepare for anything on the show, as you've probably noticed from the last 176 episodes before this. But we're going to put up a link, and if you click on that, you go to the landing page, you click one of the levels, like the $9.99 or the one that's $16.99, and you get 10% off your first month. No commitments. It's just month to month. But very ideal, 10% off, right? And it's only $1,000 a month. I mean, that's really affordable. So, and a little bit about them. If you run a CPG brand and need design help, Creative Kaiju might be exactly what you're looking for. It's like having your own design team without the cost of hiring in-house. For one flat monthly fee, you can request as many designs as you need: packaging design, pitch decks, social posts, whatever. No contracts, no hidden fees, just fast, reliable design made for growing CPG brands. So that is it for them. All right. And we're the number one CPG podcast right now in the world for viewed and watched. Make sure to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast. All right. I think that's it, Wade.
I think so. You nailed it.
All right. And again, I'm a little tired today, but was up really late last night. So Wade, you're going to probably carry a lot of the show here. So I'm just
Let's
being
go.
totally honest.
Let's go. We'll take the training wheels off. Let's figure it out.
Cool. All right. So our guest, he's the founder and CEO of New Primal, Jason Burke. Jason, welcome to our show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome, Jason.
All right.
Yeah.
So tell us more about you, your story. And one thing we have on our show is you share one thing that we may not know about you.
Oh man, there's probably a lot you don't know about me. But if you want to know the background and the story is I grew up in Tampa, so Wade, go Bucks, you know.
All right.
And we appreciate the Baker Mayfield.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
We do certainly appreciate that. But my first job, something you might not know, my first job was at Tampa Stadium. I was 13 years old, and I sold ices during the game. So I would get into football games for free, and I'd make 50 or 60 bucks, and I'd get to watch professional sports games.
That's a good gig.
Yeah, it's a pretty good gig for a teenage kid. It was amazing. So
but were they a decent team then is the bigger question?
No, it was terrible. It was the Succaneers, you know, it was definitely the Succaneers. But I was there during, like, I transitioned, like when we went from like the orange and cream or the creamsicle and white to the pewter and the whole Tony Dungy era and all of that. Like I was there during that transition, and then we started to become good. And then they built a new stadium, and they kicked all the independent vendors out, and it became more of a, you know, a stadium-based kind of singular vendor. You couldn't have all these independent guys in the stadium anymore.
Those stadiums, that stadium is one of the best. I mean, the Pirates, it's really cool. It's really cool. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. They do a good job. But anyway, I went paleo circa 2009. Both of my parents got sick. Both were diagnosed with chronic illnesses. Both were directly related to diet and nutrition. And so I took a keen interest in food and its impact on our health holistically. And the big takeaway is I learned how to cook. You know, I started like reading ingredient labels. I started like, you know, paying attention to what I was buying. I ate out less and less, started cooking at home. And I felt the best I had ever felt in my life by sort of following that kind of protocol. I was in a software sales position at the time, and I was taking like my homemade snacks and things to work with me to keep in my desk drawer. The one thing that disappeared consistently, like daily, was I used to make homemade beef jerky. You know, I bought like a little $40 tabletop dehydrator, and I would keep in my kitchen. And I was, you know, buying meat from the local farmer, and I was, you know, using my own little spice blend and so forth. And it was pretty good. You know, kept it in a Ziploc bag, took it to work, and it kept me away from the Snickers. And every time I would go to a meeting, somebody stole some from me. And so I finally put a tip jar out and made people pay me for it. And so my buddies they would drop like a $20 bill with a sticky note and their name on it, like in my little tip jar. And suddenly, like, people were giving me orders to make them their own. And so within 6 months, I went from this one little, like, you know, $40 tabletop dehydrator to 6 of these things across my little kitchen. And I was in a little condo at the time. And it was suddenly like a part-time job. And so my wife goes out on a girls' night out, comes home. I'm in the kitchen. I'm flipping trays. You know, the whole place is smoky. You know, it looks like, and she's like, "You got to get this stuff out of here, man. Everything we have smells like a barbecue. There's no room in the refrigerator. All you got is a bunch of meat in there." And so this was kind of an aha moment. Like, well, are we on to something? Like, is there something to this? So I set up a really bad website, and just a place where people could just make orders. And I rented a 200 square foot shared kitchen space that I got USDA inspected. And that was my part-time job for the next 18 months. I did everything I could to learn about the regulatory side of food manufacturing. I know far too much about meat science that I never wanted to know. And I quit my job September of 2012. And went full time into the meat snack business, and really, really green, like not having any idea what I was doing. And essentially what happened, it's funny, the fresh market has such an interesting connection for me. What happened was I started cold calling every major retailer in the country. Being from Florida, I called Publix first, and I actually got a meeting. And they gave me a meeting on a cold call. No broker, no distributor, no nothing. I had made a connection with a guy at the fresh market, and he also gave me a meeting. And so I remember driving to Greensboro and going up for that meeting, but I had no idea what I was doing. If you look at my first few pitch decks, there are industry terms like trade and slotting, even like, I remember Publix asking me, do you have, are you set up with your EDI connection? And I said, yeah. And then I went to my car and Googled, what does EDI mean? I mean, my first order for Publix, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and admit this publicly now. My first order for Publix, when they finally put an order in, I had never sourced a pallet like to ship out, and I didn't know where to get them. So I drove to a Publix and I took some pallets from the back of their store and loaded it in my pickup truck. And then I filled their order on those pallets and shipped them back to them. So at least they got them back. But fast forward 15 years, man. And here we are, still kicking it. We've sort of taken a winding road here with, evolving from beef jerky to meat sticks, to mini meat sticks, to different formats. And then we had this entire sort of like side quest with sauces and seasonings and everything that we did on that side of the business. And so we've kind of come back to the center here and back on this crazy wild ride of meat snacks. It's really funny when people ask me questions like, gosh, this whole protein trend is out of control, right? And I'm like, I've been in it for 15 years. It feels like it's been out of control for a long time.
I love that. And just for if you're just joining us, Alex is having some internet issues. So I think Jason and I are going to try and pull this thing off. I think we can do this. So I love it. There's a lot to touch on there that I want to talk about. So 15 years, early stages. Talk about, so you've evolved, right? You started with meat. You kind of dabbled in these other things. And truthfully, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was starting to think that I was old and I forgot that, in my head, I'm like, Jason used to make sauces and stuff, because I remember carrying them, and now it's just meat again. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, the evolution from deciding to get in, from your core, and then you got into these different things, these side projects, and now you're kind of back to the core. And talk a little bit about that journey, why you decided to expand, and then why you decided to contract to where you are now.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it comes up a lot. So it's interesting, because I think this is the typical. What I'm going to say next, I think, is very typical of the entrepreneurial journey and struggle to maintain focus, because we have a lot of ideas and we want to do a lot of things, and we typically will try a lot of things. And I said yes to a lot. So what happened was, I was the first person, I believe, to commercialize grass-fed beef jerky. Like, that wasn't a thing until I put it in a bag and took it to a retailer. They might have had some at your local farmer's market. You may have had a one-off here and there, but to my knowledge, no one took that to retail and commercialized it before I did. Now, I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I think the story is interesting. So I thought the most natural outlet for this product would be the natural retail channel. Mm-hmm. And I thought Whole Foods should take this immediately. Like, this should be like, they should champion this line. Well, they didn't. It was a gigantic pain in the ass to even get into my local Whole Foods. I couldn't get anyone to take a call. I couldn't get anyone to take a meeting. And it was a really difficult thing to accomplish. So, I mean, Publix, for example, accepted grass-fed beef jerky from me before any natural independent retailer did, which I thought was wild. But I kept thinking, if we can get there, then we can create a platform around this and really build awareness, with our core consumer, the people that should be core to this. So we had finally, after a few years, we had gotten into a few of the regions at Whole Foods with this product. And, we had a Northwest or a Northern California, and then we got the Rocky Mountain region. And I went to a meeting with them in this region for jerky, and we were talking about some new products and so forth. And then the regional buyer at the time said, hey, I'm going to go do a workout at this CrossFit gym after this meeting. How long are you in town for? And I was like, long enough to go do a workout with you. So we went and did a workout together, and we sort of bonded over that, and we created a little bit of relationship. So we had. I promise I'll bring it together now.
No, you're
good. Basically, what we had was, we had two at this point, I had outsourced the manufacturing of beef jerky. I wasn't making it anymore. I realized very quickly, I'm not the guy to do this. I had 2 facilities making the same product. And the product was really inconsistent between the 2. And I couldn't figure out why. So one solve for that was I was going to start pre-mixing the spice blend and the marinade and sending it into these places separately. And all they would have to do is just take this bucket of marinade, dump it on the meat, and put it in the oven. I didn't want to risk them mixing like a different brand of garlic powder or a different brand of lemon juice into the recipe. So I'm like, we're going to make this consistent. And that helped. But in that process, I was shipped a bunch of like quality samples to my office of this marinade. And they were, just to keep in the back, I guess. And they were stacking up. Like we would get these QA samples like every other week. And so at the time, one of the guys in our office was he was running our logistics, and he's like, what are y'all going to do with all these bottles? And we're like, I have no idea. And he's like, well, I got a bunch of grilling to do this weekend. Do you mind if I take some home? And we were like, dude, that's a beef jerky recipe. You're not going to put that on your steak, right? Like, you're not going to put that on your, I was like, it's not going to work. Like it's not meant for that. So he goes, let me go play with it. So we said, take it, please get it out of our office. So he comes in on Monday and he brings a bunch of leftover food and he goes, you have to try this. And so, he warmed some up, he put it in front of us, and we're trying his chicken and we're trying his, his steak, and it was phenomenal. And we said, well, what'd you do? He goes, nothing. I poured that marinade in there on it. I let it sit for 6 hours and I cooked it. He's like, I didn't do anything else. And I was like, really? He's like, dude, it's really good. And so we were sort of perplexed. We're like, So he's like, you could launch this. And I'm like, no way, man. We're not doing that. Anyway, I let it get to me. I sent a couple of bottles of it to my friend in the Rocky Mountain region at Whole Foods. And I said, hey, will you try this? I know you're like a paleo guy. This is something we just accidentally ran into. What do you think about this?
Right.
So he did. He cooked with it. He called me back. He goes, Jason, stuff is great. And then maybe the most serendipitous moment of my career, he within the next 2 weeks, he goes, I'm moving to Austin. I've got the global category manager position. My first category is condiments and sauces. Do you want to launch that marinade you sent me a few weeks ago? And I was like, I don't know. I make beef jerky. And he goes, we can, why don't you come to Austin? We'll do a meeting and we'll talk about it. So I flew to Austin, sat in a big boardroom, big meeting. And he said, all right, the category resets in 3 months. If you can commercialize this and get it ready, I'll launch it nationally. And we went, well, shoot, this is our chance. This is our foot in the door in the place that we've been trying to get into for so many years. And maybe if we can just prove out that we can be a national brand at Whole Foods, then they'll bring our beef jerky in.
Right.
So the whole goal was to like, here, we'll give you this, and hopefully we can come in the back door with our beef jerky. So we launched it. It went well. We became the #1 selling marinade at Whole Foods nationally in the first 6 months. He calls me back. He goes, do you know how well this is performing? And we said, no, what's happening? And he's like, you're the #1 brand in the category suddenly. He goes, what else you got in your innovation pipeline? And we said, nothing. We make beef jerky. We don't have anything in the sauce pipeline. He goes, I think you should do some more stuff with the sauces. But but he was shifting desks to somewhere else. And he goes, let me introduce you to the new category manager. I think you guys should talk. And she says, hey, Jason, I really think you should do a barbecue sauce. I really think you should do a wing sauce. No one's done anything, with a clean oil, no sugar, that tastes good, like ever. Why don't you take what you've done with your marinade, apply those same values and principles, and continue to expand? And I was like, really? And so we came up on the phone with 6 SKUs for barbecue and wing sauce. And she goes, send me the UPC codes. We'll get them set up. I had to run a single sample.
Oh my gosh.
And so this continued across beef jerky, sauces, salad dressings, seasoning blends, barbecue sauces, wing sauces, global flavors for the next 3 years. And I launched 36 SKUs over the next 36 months nationally at Whole Foods.
Wow.
And because we had this collaborative relationship, we could discuss, and they became like a testing ground. Like not everything worked, but if it worked there and we gained some traction, then we would try to expand it more broadly.
Right.
Now, This is a cautionary tale because while you can do that sometimes, and that's a rare circumstance, but while sometimes those rare circumstances present themselves, all that did was just dilute our ability to drive velocity to our core. Because now we're trying to support 40 items on a national scale across multiple categories, and we're not at scale with any of it yet.
Right.
So it's a cautionary tale. We got very wide because we just thought, hey, if they're going to give us the shelf space and they're going to trust us and their consumers are responding to it, let's just keep getting it. Rather than let's take the money that we'll spend on innovation and slotting and commercialization of a new item, and why don't we just use that to drive velocity of the stuff that's already in there?
Right.
And so, that's where this winding road took us. And so we finally looked at ourselves. 4 years ago and said, okay, we're way too wide. Like, we're trying to punch through the glass with like an open hand, and like, we got to start dialing this in. Like, what's actually working? What has supply chain issues? What is dragging the margins down? This isn't scalable to do this unless we just have an unlimited well of cash back there, and we don't.
Right.
So for the past few years, we've slowly pared the portfolio down and created more and more focus to determine like, where can we best meet the consumer need, and scale the brand. Where do we create the win-win? And for us, it's been primarily in the meat sticks. We still do have some sauces in the marketplace. There aren't very many left, but we focus that in on wing sauce primarily, some wing and barbecue. But outside of that, our entire focus has been in meat snacks, and then meat sticks has just been the form that has really, really taken off and accelerated the past few years.
Got it. No, this is fabulous. And there's a lot to dig into that I want to dig into. And so as I look at your website and like right now, I see just the sticks, right? So, that's all that's there. So, but you still do have the other products. It's just not an online format. Your website, I should say.
Yeah, we have a separate website for the Noble Made business.
Noble Made, that's right. That's right. Okay.
We separated it entirely. It's its own little thing.
Okay.
It's not a great online business because it's glass, and so we don't really emphasize the online portion of that business much. Meat sticks are much better.
I completely forgot about the other brand. That's I'm glad we. So, but then from a jerky standpoint, are you still making jerky?
No.
Okay. So now it's all sticks, and certainly you've done a lot of innovating. I want to get into that. There's so much I want to touch on, but let's go back. So that was great hearing about the evolution from where you were, how you got to where you are. I want to touch on now, as you're building. So originally, you're sitting at your desk, your people are stealing your stuff. You got the tip jar. One thing leads to another. You work out with Whole Foods, and now you're best friends. And it's a crazy story, right? I mean, it's hard. If you're listening, I think your words of being cautionary tale are very, very, very spot on. Just simply from, it doesn't happen this way. This isn't your normal CPG story, right?
Yeah.
What I want to talk about is, all right, so you've got the tip jar, you're moving, growing. Talk about how you build out your team, because I think everybody looks at you as the face. We know you have a bigger team, obviously, that you wouldn't be the brand that you are without. But as you were progressing from the tip jar to these SKUs and growing, how did you? Because that's one of the things I often get asked on my side and in these forums is, when's the right time to add this person? When do I expand? Do I put it in marketing? Do I put it in sales? Do I put it in operations? How do I build it out? When do I build it out? And so on. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. Well, my first few hires were people who showed up at the door and said, I want to be a part of this. And, they had, I would say, they had skills that weren't CPG focused, but that could transition. And they were just passionate. So my first few hires were not CPG guys, if you will. I think that works to your advantage early on. If you have people that'll just work their ass off and like figure things out, you need that in that first initial push. I'd say like $0 to $1 million. It doesn't matter as much. You just need people who are passionate and believe in what you're doing. You almost want people that don't know the rules. And for me, a lot of don't know what, that big bucket of don't know what you don't know, helped me. Think about Publix. Okay. Right. I cold called them and they gave me a meeting. Like I called like 1-800 Publix. Like I'm not kidding. Like I just called like the customer service number and I was like, hey, I'm a brand. How do I talk to the guy that's in charge of meat snacks? And they go, oh, It's Gus. Let me transfer you. Like,
Wow.
this never happens. Okay, a broker would have been like, oh, we got to prepare. You got to be perfect. The deck has to look like this. It's got to be like this. And then we got to forget all that. So, like, I think, like, sometimes don't know what you don't know is to your advantage. But that's early.
Right.
Now, at a certain point, you can't do that anymore. But I think early, that's okay. I think it works. So what I'd say is, like, a world-class salesperson is probably first. I think sales cure a lot of things. And so, you want someone that understands account management. You want someone that understands broker management. You want someone that understands the data and how to read it and how to present a case. Someone who can help you plan the trade out, create ROI analysis around, like, does this trade pay out? Should we go to work with that retailer first, or should we wait 10 more retailers down before we expand there? You want someone who can create that, like, channel plan and that retail roadmap so that you don't get too out of sorts. I think for me, if I were to do it all over again, an experienced head of sales would be my first big time hire. Personally. And I'm like a sales, and, like, I think, like, I skew sales, but there's a lot of, like, devil in the details that I did not know. And I think having that person would be super, super helpful. Look, some people are really, I would say, marketing centric. Some brands are really marketing centric, and they can just, create beautiful images and beautiful ads, and they can create moments that people, like, really want to attach themselves to. If you could find an absolute rock star in that department, I mean, Liquid Death built their entire business on that model. And I think, like, hey, if you got someone like that, great. That requires a shit ton of money.
Yeah, it does.
So I think, like, to build a brand on marketing early on, it doesn't mean you should ignore it, but to build it early on, like, marketers need money. And without it, like, I mean, there's ways to be resourceful, but without it, you can't really fully utilize their skill set.
Right.
Accounting, I think you can outsource for a long time. You can fractional CFO it. You can fractional accounting firm it. We did that. I mean, I didn't hire my first accounting hire until we were probably $15 million in revenue before I hired an internal accountant. There are great organizations that can do everything from the bean counting to the strategic CFO guidance and advisory. And so we did that for a long time. At a certain point, you want someone to come and run the ship, but I don't think you need to go pay $250,000 a year for a CFO. Right. In the earlier stages. I think that's certainly a great fractional role. Some of the operations stuff can be done that way as well. There's some great organizations where you can outsource the operations piece, who can help you set up the supply chain and manage your co-manufacturers and get your contracts in place. If you can find that kick-ass director of operations in the earlier stages, fantastic. But I think they can also utilize an outsourced team and sort of, like, dual path that. I think that's perfectly okay. As you scale, you need to build out the team internally, in my opinion. But I think, like, in the early stages, you can outsource it as long as you have an internal point person that understands everything from logistics to supply chain to the manufacturing side. So I think, like, that's kind of, like, to me, that's kind of a both. Like,
right.
maybe have both. But I'd start with sales. I think you have to go create the mess and then get those really great operators to go help you clean it up. And also kind of know yourself, right? Know thyself. I think, like, if as a founder and entrepreneur, if you just sort of have that engineer's mind and you want to, like, do all that operational stuff behind the scenes, great. Then
you really need a rock star salesperson, right?
That's so I think it's kind of know thyself a little bit, but that's how I would do it. I would personally, like, if you were to say, Jason, start over today, what are the things you do different? I would say I would absolutely build a really strong e-commerce presence, whether that's direct to consumer on my website or Amazon or both. I like Amazon a lot in the early days because you don't have to spend as much money on the top of funnel brand awareness. You can get some traction, you can get some volume, you can get the proof points with the reviews, and there's a way to get that flywheel really turning. I have friends that build $10, $20, $30 million Amazon businesses before they ever go to brick and mortar retail. So I would get a nice flywheel of Amazon and brick and that going, and then I would go own my backyard. So if I'm a Southeast brand, I would go to Earth Fair, I would go to the Fresh Market, I would go to the mom and pop independent stores in the Southeast, and I would own that market first. I would, like, take my top 2 or 3 products. I wouldn't go wide on SKUs. take my 2 or 3, I'd go there and I would own it. I would demo the hell out of it. I would promote the hell out of it. I would gain all the traction. I would have best in class velocities before I even considered the Midwest,
right?
Before I even considered the West Coast. So I would just be a lot more focused. And so I think, deep, both on SKU or deep on your retailers, don't go wide, and same thing on SKUs. I'd go really deep with your core before I'm trying to go wide and create a bunch of stuff. But I think the e-commerce element is a good piece to that. So to the extent you can hire an internal rock star on that front,
right,
or you outsource that to an agency or third party, I think either way is really smart in the early days.
Got it. No, that's great. And I think, I think we talk all the time, inch wide, mile deep, right? And really, and that really truly is the playbook to be able to get to expand retail, because then you are building a data story that you can sell theoretically to anyone, right? You've got results, you've proven yourself, and then it's off the races, ideally. So the Whole Foods piece, the way you expanded there is certainly unconventional, anything but conventional. And same thing with Publix, the meeting aspect. So you've definitely been, I don't know if lucky's the right word, fortunate, blessed. I don't know what the word is, but those, again, cautionary tale. But I think there is something that I would take away from all that is shoot your shot. Right. I mean, and you did that. And if you hadn't, it's what's the, I'm going to mess up the saying. It's you miss 100 shots to those that you don't take. Right. I mean, if you hadn't done that, would you be where you are? Debatable, but you did. Right. And I think the other key takeaway that I took from that Whole Foods example is that relationship piece, the workout thing. And whether the workout is for everyone, it's you put yourself out there and it just build on from that. And I think that's something that every founder and emerging brand needs to think about from, is how you build those relationships. And then, one thing leads to another, the example of moving to Austin, so on and so forth. That's the structure. You'd built the foundation, and then it just blossoms from there. And I don't know if you agree completely with that. That's my synopsis of what you said.
No, I think you're spot on. I think closed mouths don't get fed. You got to go make the request. You got to make the ask. I mean, the biggest thing that I think, again, having a sales background, like the thing that separates good salespeople from bad salespeople is good salespeople close. They ask for the business. It's none of this, well, good talking to you, see you later, hope to get a call back from you. It's like, no, what do we got to do?
Right.
What do you need to hear from me right now to make this happen? And so I think, you have to take those shots. On the Whole Foods side, what I will say is it took me 5 years. So it was 5 years of knocking on every region's door every few months. And hey, is now the right time?
Right.
Hey, is now the right time? Hey, can I send you some new samples? Hey, it's been a while. And so it was one region at a time. And we had 4 regions before we went national, but we had to go national very unconventionally. And that's all. And I would say that's a very lucky story on how that all occurred.
Right. So the follow-up piece, let's dig into that a little bit. So what was your cadence? Did you have like every so many days, or I'm sorry, days isn't right, weeks, months, quarter? What was your cadence for when you follow up, how you follow up? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think a general rule of thumb is like every 90 days. If they've told you to, like, hey, not now, if they've given me a timeline, then I always follow that. But my general rule of thumb is if I present something and they say not now, great, I'll check back with you next quarter. Okay. And so I'm like always kind of, want to stay in their ear. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, if you will.
Yep.
And so I'm just going to keep showing up until you tell me not to. And there was I worked in insurance once upon a time, and that industry is really weird, but there was an old insurance sales coach, who probably won back in the 70s, but he used to say, follow up until they buy or die. And that always stuck with me. Like, again, not in an annoying way. There's a way to do it that's like checking in,
right?
Still here, let me know if there's an opportunity to discuss, or if I've got new news. Hey, I just became the number 1 SKU at,
I love that. That's
try
great.
To, have some new news if you can. That's
innovation,
always
packaging, something, right? You're not just, hey, this stuff that you said no to last quarter, here it is again. Remember, I'm still here. Yeah. I think that's a great point. And for those of you listening, I know I think the audience, truthfully, right now is captivated, because usually there's a lot of stuff going on. I think everybody's just really dialed in and listening to what you have to say because they're not listening to me. We do have one question. I'd encourage those listening, though, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Gavin Conkle, my buddy, wants to know, how have those relationships evolved from 10 years ago to today? It feels there's definitely less of that Whole Foods opportunity, whereas 10 to 15 years ago, that seemed to be more likely across some retailer category managers.
Well, first of all, let me just say, Wade, Gavin, both of you directly, I need you guys to like stay put because, you know, we were building these relationships with people like you, and then you all graduate and go other places. So thank you for that. I will say it's very different. There are certainly opportunities where I think like I lead with relationships. I mean, I just think like building strong relationships. What can I do for you? How can I help you? Let's like, it's not always an ask. Sometimes it's just a, hey, I learned something new. Check this out. I think like you have to provide value to those people in order to build some of those relationships. That at Whole Foods specifically, like that environment where like that group, that entire group, there was probably a half a dozen of them where we were just, you know, it was, you know, think about the people who launched Siete chips, the people who launched Simple Mills, the people who launched us, the people who launched Epic Bar back in the day. Like these were like, there was a moment in time where they had extraordinary flexibility to like champion new ideas and present them to their audience, and most of it worked really well. That group of people doesn't work there anymore. And you know, they've moved on.
Right.
And you know, Whole Foods was acquired by Amazon, and it wasn't a full, like, it didn't happen overnight, but slowly but surely, there's just a different way of doing business with them today. There are some retailers that certainly lean in to innovation and new ideas and new concepts. I think Sprouts has done a fantastic job of this with their innovation set and the people that are in there, and they're extraordinarily collaborative. And, you know, so I think to the extent someone is there and you can latch on and you can provide value and you can find some synergy where you guys can just like toss ideas around, and it's not just you just pitching, you should do that, and you should hang on for dear life to those relationships, and always lead with that.
Right.
So I've got a couple right now that like I personally have been like, you know, building some new ones at larger places where we haven't had distribution historically. But I look at it differently because I would say, I posted about this on LinkedIn of maybe a year ago. I do think there's a silent crisis of category managers getting burned out in retail and not sticking around. And whether that's because they're burned out or because there's a better opportunity on the other side of the fence or whatever, but we have a silent crisis where that position churns at a very high rate today. And I don't know, you know, again, I've been doing this 15 years. I don't know that it churned this high a decade ago. I don't know that it churned this high 5 years ago.
No,
but
I completely agree with that. And I would say, you know, I had this conversation with somebody earlier this week that you're spot on. And really there's several opportunities or challenges there, right? So you've built this relationship, you've invested time, and theoretically now you're starting over from square one. May or may not be the case. If it's an internal person, they're leaving on good terms, there might be a handoff, things go smooth. Worst case scenario, at least from my perspective, is maybe to your point, it's a crisis. They're leaving for whatever. It's not necessarily a bad breakup, but it's not necessarily good. It's 2-week notice. Boom, they're gone. Guess what? Now you're back to it, and they hire for somebody from the outside that you don't have a relationship, you don't know from a pre, and you really have to go back in and start all over. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of too is obviously there's always been promotions, so there's some promotional activity, desk changing. Those internal ones are easier to navigate because that handoff is a lot easier, but it's the leaving altogether and okay, now I got to wait for the hire. Now I got to wait for them to get settled. Now I got to wait to reach out and so on and so forth. So it's, you really, especially if you're in one category or something, you're dependent on that person, where maybe if you had another category over here, you could lean on that person and say, hey, can you introduce me to the new guy and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So I feel you. And you're not off there. That's there, in my opinion. And I was on that side for 20 plus years. It's happened more often post COVID and even in the last year. And I think some of it's opportunity, some of it's burnout. a number of things, but it is, I don't think it's that silent is what I'm getting at. I think it's very vocal and obvious and happens literally monthly, if not weekly.
I would say this, I won't name the retailer. I have a lot of respect for them, but we had I've spent the last 18 months nurturing relationship at a major national retailer where we don't have distribution of meat snacks. And I mean, we're set. We're ready to go. We're waiting for the official review, but we think it's done before the review's there because we've just been nurturing this and we've been collaborating. We've been talking about what's going to happen next. And like, we've been doing the review all year. And 2 weeks before the review, she left. And an entirely new, they still did the review, which is also shocking because that usually doesn't happen, but they still did the review and it's an entirely new person. So you show up and you start from scratch and you got 20 minutes to make a pitch. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult to do.
Yeah. We have a couple comments and I want to flip things and go in a different direction here, but from Kenny at Fresh Time, I think you're spot on with the comment on category manager burnout. COVID forced a lot of CMs to run at a pace that was not sustainable long-term. Totally agree. Gavin, dollar stress, workload, stress again. CMs get it every which way from brands, distributors, stores, and then their internal team. I always said, and we always considered our category managers part of the merchandising team. At the end of the day, all roads lead to merchandising, whether it's marketing, operations, internal, all roads go through merchandising. So they wear a lot of hats, that's for sure. And then Kenny says, now here's what I'll say. A retailer with a good model disruption will happen, but should be minimal. Process should not live with one single person, but rather live within the organization. Well said, Kenny. I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn and how you have built your personal brand, because I don't feel I'm speaking out of tongue here to say you've invested a lot in that over the last, call it 2 years. And I want to talk a little bit about how you decided to do that, when you decided to do it, why you decided to do it, and how it's impacted New Primal. Right, because you are, and I think again, I'm not speaking. I don't think I'm speaking out of tongue here. You are doing a lot more than you used to do, and I want to talk why that is and how it's helped. What your thought process behind it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's not natural for me. So I want to say that out loud. Like, I purposefully shy away from all things social media and have really forever. My team has asked me for years to kind of get out in front and go talk and go say some of these things out loud. And I've refused it for a long time. I set out to build a brand that I didn't have to be the face of. I set out to build a brand that would run without me. And I think we've done that in many ways. Mm-hmm. I also, on LinkedIn, I with a few posts a few years ago, I learned how powerful the platform could be. And I realized how much reach you could get organically still versus some other places. And I thought, man, if I could just, everybody on LinkedIn is also a consumer. They're my peers, they're people within the industry, but they're also consumers. And so if it's a place we can get organic reach, why not go out and talk about the wins, the losses, the good things, the bad things? Why not go out and just tell my story publicly? Because what we found is we have very low brand awareness. Been in the industry, been in the market, national distribution, brand awareness is still very low. And so if there's one thing I can do as a founder is go tell the story and go tell it over and over and over again. And that's my superpower. And that's every founder's superpower. No one can tell their story better than they can. So I just thought, hey, I don't like talking on I don't like holding a camera in front of me, and I don't want to go on TikTok, and I don't need to edit videos or any of that. But man, I like writing, and I like talking about things about entrepreneurship and business and building a brand and all the things. And so I was like, I can do that on LinkedIn. So I did make a very, very firm commitment about 2 years ago. I hired a coach for a while to basically get me out of my head and to help me just start getting ideas onto paper to really kind of kick this off and get consistent. I'll tell you, it's been nothing short of phenomenal. My reach, the organic reach that we get, it's free. I just have to go on and make a post every day. And I didn't think, I would say this also, I had this imposter syndrome for a long time where I didn't think I had any value to add. I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm just in the trenches. I'm getting my teeth kicked in every day. Like, I don't know anything. And I think that's also a lie that we tell ourselves, because, hey, just the fact that you're in the trenches, you're learning something, or you did something wrong, someone can benefit from that information. Like, I screwed this up. I screwed this pitch up. I screwed this launch up. I screwed this supply chain issue up. We need to know that. But I felt like, man, I don't know anything. So there's no way I'm going to go tell people stuff because I don't know anything. Right. Well, you know what? Damn it. I know something. 15 years in, I know a few things. And yeah, there are brands that have like out executed me or have gotten luckier than me at certain times. But whatever, I know some things. So I'm going to go tell those cautionary tales. What it's done is open up business. I've built other relationships. I've opened other opportunities. Heck, I get a sample of something in the mail every week now. I got sample. I'm like, is this what it's like to be an influencer? I get like free samples of stuff?
Or a buyer.
or a buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, is this what it's like? So I would say it's, when I go to Expo or I go to one of these trade shows, like people come looking for me, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
The rotisserie chicken meat stick that we launched recently, I went to Sweets and Snacks and I posted about it before that show, and everybody came up looking for that stick. So it was like a way to like market that product in advance of the show, so people had a reason to come to the booth. So it's done a lot. It's open. Like I said, I've had category managers reach out and say, why haven't we talked before? Or how come I haven't seen that? Or why didn't we get that yet? I've had, again, at the trade shows, it's a way for me to kind of seed ideas and whatnot. It's positioned me as somewhat of a thought leader in the space. But to me, the whole point was free reach for the new Primal. And how do we expand our voice? Because we took such a windy road to get here, people are like, do you make sauces? Do you make meat? What do you do? So like now this is a way for me to sort of really clarify. And it's paid extraordinary dividends. It's also really rewarding personally.
Right.
So I've found it's just such a great outlet to be creative and to talk and to connect with my peers and to make new relationships and new friendships over the industry. And I think it's been a really, really good journey. I don't regret a second of it.
It's awesome. And I think what comes across to me when I see what you're posting and the content you're putting out, if you want to call it content, to me, it's your mind. And, I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I have been for years. And what was, and I'm kind of a student of the game. Right. And one of the things that I've heard time and time again are the best characters are the people themselves. Just turn the volume up. And I think essentially to me, that's what you've done, right? You're being yourself. You've just gotten outside your head and you've turned that volume up, right? And you're broadcasting it out instead of keeping it internal. So kudos to you. So do you have a strategy? Like, so if you're putting something out, on a daily basis, for me, I've always said quality over quantity. I know that that screws up the algorithms and I don't care. But I'm curious as to you when you talk about, okay, it can be kind of daunting, right? Okay, there's 7 days in a week and 365 days in a year. How are you planning out? What am I going to post about today? What's going on? What's your thought process there?
Yeah, I would say 50% of the time it's something that's happening in the moment. So like yesterday is a good example. Our trademark was recently opposed and we were sent a cease and desist letter on a trademark I've had for 15 years in commerce. And so I thought it was really funny, but I have a really killer IP lawyer, like an absolute killer. Like I dare someone to go ahead and challenge it because my boy Marty is going to come at you. But it was like, oh shit, how many people get screwed on this? How many people get cease and desist letters and like crawl in a hole? So you know what? We talk about that. Hey, here's a cautionary story. Get your IP straight and don't do it yourself. Don't hire your real estate lawyer uncle to do it. So a lot of times it's like whatever's happening today. And I guarantee you, people in the trenches, there's a finance issue, there's an ops issue, there's a marketing issue, there's a sales win. There's something like that going on. The other half of the time, I do have a bank of ideas that like whenever ideas come up, I just go write them down. So I just keep a bank and it's like, you know what? LinkedIn, I will say, doesn't reward too much content. This isn't a place where you can go post 3 or 4 times a day. It actually hurts you. And so now that I've like unlocked the idea bank, I just like, I need to go talk about that. And so I just go jot. I have a little notes app. I just go jot it down. And then I wake up every morning and like before the day gets going and before anything really starts happening, then I just go expound on those ideas.
Nice.
So I spend the early parts of the day as I'm like thinking and getting like ready for the day and drinking my coffee and so forth. I like look at yesterday's idea or whatever it is. And I go, you know what? Here's a lesson I learned, or here's how I want to expound on that. And I just write it out. So nice. I would say it's not that structured, but I keep an idea bank so that I don't run dry.
Got it. Got it. No, I love that. So we only have a few minutes left. And I want to be, it is Friday afternoon and you're on the East Coast like I am. So we got to be cognizant of our time because we've got stuff to do. But I've asked you a lot of questions. I want to open this up for you as far as, is there anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to touch on? Say, hey, this is on my mind or this is going on, or just, it's just a outlet to say, something that's on your mind relative to what's going on in your world right now or something we didn't touch on.
There's something that I wrote out that I didn't post recently on LinkedIn that I think is something that we should bring to the surface. And I don't know that we need to go too deep, but just some ideas, something that we should think about. I think there's a really big challenge right now in CPG around this idea that people have. Let me make sure I don't get in trouble when I say this. I think one of the biggest challenges we face is execution in the field. People doing what they say they're going to do. And so I think one conversation that we should be having in CPG across the board, retailers, buyers, category managers, C-suite, brands, brokers, merchandisers, all of us need to be having is, we pay the brands pay a gigantic fee to run promotions and deals at retailers, big ones. I don't care who you are; it's a big fee. And a good majority of retailers don't guarantee you price reflection, execution, and there's no real recourse. If hey, we paid $15,000 for that TPR, and half the stores, the tags never went up. What do we do about that? We'll catch you on the next one. There's no real answer. Right. And then the other, there's this hey, labor's an issue, but you guys all charge in-store execution fees now. So right. What do you mean labor's an issue? Or, and so I think we got to solve this because this is hard. And let me just tell you, people think brands have money and private equity money and all these things. But I'll tell you this, there isn't a brand in CPG, in my opinion, who's doing less than $20 million in sales, which is a lot to do to start from nothing. Mm-hmm. They don't have any money. If you're doing less than 20 million in sales, you don't have any money. I promise you that. So every penny, if they're committing to those promotions and things, needs to be executed. But the fact that there's no recourse, the fact that there's not even a conversation, forget the recourse. There's no hey, we paid $40,000 for that off shelf and 30% of the stores complied. What do we do about that? Nothing. The answer is nothing. And I think we need to have this conversation because this is a problem that we should solve as a group.
Well, and I appreciate that. And having been on both sides of the desk, I have had those conversations, and I know when my operation, when we talk about stores and operations, you're talking about store level, boots on the ground, people there. When my operations team let me down, and obviously I'm probably the abnormal one here. I'm not the norm. And it was brought to my attention, because I couldn't, whether it was 4 stores in San Diego or whether it was 170 stores here in on the southeast, I can't see all execution on an everyday basis. I'm reliant on someone like you, a broker, someone in the field to say, hey, what's going on? And then I will escalate it. And I think I would like to think that if you have those conversations, and I see Kenny in here, I see Gavin in here, and people, and maybe there's a reason why they're in here, right? Because they're on the upper echelon of those who we're talking about. Yeah. I have in the past, I've given free end caps because we didn't execute. I have extended deals because we didn't execute. I have done different things, and I think, but it just like I said earlier, all roads lead back to merchandising. I think all roads lead back, unfortunately, to you. Yeah. Or the person you're paying for that execution, whether that's a broker, a merchandiser, a third party out in the field, one of those guys to say, hey, we got a problem. They didn't do this. And then you have to go back and say, to the CMs and say, hey guys, we missed the boat here. What can we do? And there has to be, I agree with you. It's a problem. We see it on our end. Now that I'm a service provider, I think first and foremost, you can't just let it go. You have to at least bring it up. And a normal process should be, from a brand perspective, especially with your bigger partners, your bigger retailers, there should be business reviews, right? And you should be doing those on an annual basis. And I think that happens at the high level, when you're talking about the big boys. But I challenge you that if it's an important customer to you, and you could say that every customer is important. But I think, when you start talking about these larger parties, especially ones that are charging fees and things like that, there should be a strategy planning around how you want to execute and what you're going to do with that money and what money they want, because in this one, it might be a print ad, and this one, it might be an off shelf, and this one, it might be e-com and digital. If I'm going to partner with you, I'm going to spend that money. What's the best way to spend it?
Yep.
And how are we going to execute it? And
Yep.
it's probably, again, I know we're over time, and I don't want to keep you, but I don't know what your thought in general speaking. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. I think it has to be a two-way street. Again, in my experience, I think it's more rare than it is not to be able to have the conversation like you just referenced. I think those upfront conversations, they all happen. I think what happens is on the back end, someone drops the ball, but there's never really an opportunity to correct it. It's very rare.
Yeah.
And I think we need to have that conversation. I think it goes back to, though, some of the inconsistency on the CM desk, some of the inconsistency in the relationship management, some of the inconsistency in like how information flows. I mean, there's some that do it really well. Don't get me wrong. There's some best in class partners that do it really well. There's some that don't do it as well. I think that we have it's a bigger problem for the emerging brands. And I think, innovation is going to suffer because of it. I think there's just going to be challenges for some of the smaller brands to really grow up because they're not on a level playing field. Or you're required to pay your third-party merchandiser to go in and fix it. But
Right.
a lot of retailers charge in-store execution fees anyway. So now you're double dipping. And then all that does is erode margin, which prevents your ability to go spend more money. So I think that's a challenge that we should surface and people should talk about. And I don't know how to solve it, but I think we should.
No, I love it. I think the first thing is you said it earlier, and I use the exact phrase all the times. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You've got to be the squeaky wheel. If you have a service provider, whether that's a broker, whether that's a third party, you have to hold them accountable for that execution. And also from a strategic standpoint, in that their submissions and for Earth Fair, and I'm just using these guys because they're in the audience, for Earth Fair, for Fresh Time, for the Fresh Market, for Jimbo's. It shouldn't be a cookie cutter plan that I, as a service provider, am just submitting because, 20% off 4 times a year, boom, done, let's go.
Yeah.
What do they need? What moves the needle at that retailer? What is actually going to happen? What am I getting? What am I getting in return? Is it wise? Is it the right move for this retailer, for this account? And you should be having those conversations and holding the people that you're entrusting, whether that's an internal party, an external party. You have to hold them accountable, and then you have to, like I said, the dialogue has to be there, with on the back end, on the front end, all throughout. So we could probably go on about that. And Jason, it's been a pleasure. We've interacted a lot of times, in past lives, in my previous roles. I respect the hell out of what you do, what you've done. The content you're putting out, the brand. I haven't had the chicken rotisserie yet, but I'm going to. I'm a meat guy. I've got to find it. And I look forward to trying it. I think I have one of those Jordan's baskets coming. I don't know if it's in the next one or not.
If you've got Jordan's basket coming, it's in the one that he's got right now. We shipped it recently.
Okay, I was gonna say, I know I have one coming. I know I have one coming, so I'm looking forward to it.
If you don't, I'll get you some samples. Look, my last plug then will be, it's shocking to me that we eat 940 million rotisserie chickens in America a year. Meat sticks are the fastest growing snack category in the grocery store today. Naturally positioned meat sticks are driving 95% of that growth. It's all pretty beef centric. And no one has considered a rotisserie chicken flavor profile. And I was someone else will, but we thought we were really lucky once again to have that concept and to try to rush it to market. So we're really proud of it. We're really excited for that innovation, and I'll send you some samples.
Virtually every single retailer in the country has a rotisserie chicken in their deli. So, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, kudos to you for thinking of the idea, but it truly has been a pleasure. Yeah. Those of you listening and or just joining in, Alex had some internet issues. He'll be back next week with me. I'm not sure who we have. I don't have my sheet up, but join us next week, same time, for CPG Vibes. I almost said Friday Vibes. Jeez, I know where my head's at. It's Friday. 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. on Pacific time next week. And Jason, again, thank you. Go check out New Primal if you haven't. Noble Made, shop noblemade.com, newprimal.com. And Jason, thanks again, brother. Have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody.